Welcome in to the Hot Read Podcast live here on a Friday, January the 24th. I am your host, JT Ruhnke, writer and reporter here at Broadway Sports Media and 440 Sports. You can follow me over on Twitter at JT_Ruhnke. And today, I'm joined by seemingly almost a new person, Stoney Keeley, editor-in-chief of Sobros Network, one half of Football and Other F Words, and co-writer over at Stacking the Inbox, and owner of a brand new haircut, Stoney.
Yeah, I did.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this a thing you did today?
I did.
Oh, okay. So this is your Titans podcast debut of the new haircut.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to go to Mobile and be outside in the wind all next week and just have my hair getting all tangled up, ending up a sweaty mess by the end of the day. So I went. It was time. I thought, hey, I gotta get rid of this, and I don't like it, to be frank. I like the haircut. I'm saying I don't like coping with the fact that I had to cut my hair because I feel like I just look like every basic ass almost 40-year-old dude walking around Nashville now. So
I love it, but you know what? It looks good on you, and it is a Hot Read Happy Hour Friday.
Hot Read Happy Hour.
Going to enjoy the haircut, the talking of ball, and it is a Hot Read Happy Hour, and I'm bringing it back once again. Maybe it's just going to be back forever because we finally can rejoice today, Stoney. Draft season is upon us. We are here.
Man.
We've gotten through the introductory mumbo jumbo of a new GM. The Titans personnel is already down at the East-West Shrine Bowl. I believe they just spoke to Shadur Sanders as we were going live here. There's a lot of stuff to talk about now that the Titans have moved officially into the offseason here. So excited to talk to you and everybody else here in the chat about that, but can't do that before we shout out our wonderful sponsor, ML Rose, with 7 wonderful locations in Capitol View, Franklin, Gallatin, Melrose, and Mount Juliet, Sylvan Park, and coming soon to Inglewood on Gallatin Pike. Got to get out to ML Rose, before we head down for the Senior Bowl, because then we're not going to be down there, or not going to be able to find an ML Rose down in Mobile, Alabama. But nevertheless, I don't think they are. We're going to be doing a lot of oysters and good times at Winsel. Maybe some underhand taco shoving into our mouth. You never know what's going on down there. Always a fun time in Mobile, Alabama. But before we do that, we got to talk about what to expect in Mobile, Alabama. Talk about finally our, maybe January 24th beliefs about the 101 and so much more. If you are joining us on Twitter or Facebook or listening to the podcast feed and you're missing out on Stoney's beautiful and lovely haircut, do us a favor and head on over to the Broadway Sports Media and 440 Sports YouTube channels, where you can join so many of you wonderful people here in the chat, like Eddie, who says, Stoney, haircut looking fire. Joey Turner sending some questionable search terms into the chat here. Z Dean saying next up for Stoney is Botox, maybe. And so many more of you here talking about what the Titans should potentially do at the 101. Team Ramrod saying, I knew they would drum up interest in the pick, but I didn't expect them to lay it on this thick this soon. And this is an important thing here to talk about. It's important because along with draft season, it's also lying season. Lies out the wazoo, as Zach says. Woo Friday. Glad you are here with us. Richard saying ready for a Mayo commercial, and Bobby saying first time he's made it live. Hell yes. Good to see you, go. Bobby. Let's talk about, the draft and what they should do. And about, more specifically, the All-Star Bowls that are coming up this week. First of all, the East-West Shrine Bowl, which kicked off, I believe, today, and they'll have practices throughout the next half week or so. And then on Monday, the Senior Bowl, sponsored by Reese's, or, the draft starts in Mobile, and we'll be down at Hancock Whitney Stadium all week next week, which is a good time to say that we, the Hot Read Podcast and the 440 Sports Network is coming hot and heavy to you live in Mobile Don't twist my words like that. I saw that pause. But nevertheless, we will be live every single day down in Mobile. Look out on our Twitter pages, both mine, Stoney 440s, and the Hot Read page to know when we're live. I think general schedule right now that we're going to follow. I think Monday's show will definitely be me and Braden Gall doing a football show Hot Read podcast hybrid, kind of breaking down, our initial thoughts at the Senior Bowl before the practices kick off. And then every single day after that, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you will get a Hot Read podcast daily live at 4 p.m. Central Time, along with exclusive interviews with a lot of our national friends who are going to be down there, player interview cut-ups that we will bring to you, as well as just any other content we feel like, making quick hits, live reactions that will go up immediately after Senior Bowl practices. So many fun things that are going to be happening at the Senior Bowl next week. Super excited to be down there. And Stoney, do you think we'll have to bring the sunscreen this time?
Yeah, I've already got two cans of it ready to go. I've already put them in my backpack so that I wouldn't forget them. I'm still going to bake. I mean, it's just what I do. I'm very fair skinned. I can be outside for 20 minutes in the cloudy weather and come back inside and be sunburnt, but I'm at least trying to be proactive about it this year.
Yeah. I think I'll be right there with you. Tyler saying, had to take a break from watching Easton's interview to be here. Have to give a shout out to our boy, former host of the Hot Read podcast, Easton, which he had a banger of an interview that I've been able to take in and marinate on all week. It's been really just a wonderful get. We're going to bring up some of those things that he said, but if you haven't, no free shout outs, but for Easton, we'll make an exception. If you have not heard or know about Easton sitting down with head coach Brian Callahan for 90 minutes, talking about everything from last year going forward, the power structure, everything, even quarterback things, which we'll talk about here on the show live today. Got to go over to A to Z Sports and look at that, because he did an absolutely amazing job with that interview, which leads us to the All-Star Bowl games that are going on. It's interesting because it feels like such a philosophical shift for the better for the Titans right now. And it just kind of comes with the circumstances of where they are now in this part of their cycle right now, right? Last year, we're going down to the Senior Bowl. The head coach was just hired, hadn't even really put his staff together. Rand Carthon was back with Brian Callahan, kind of going through those interviews, setting up the staff like that. And so that's where the big, controversy, I guess you could say, came from, that the Titans have nobody in the Senior Bowl. What are they doing? They end up taking 6 Senior Bowl players. So obviously they do have people down there, but this time around at both games, the staff more or less is pretty much put together. And, you have a collective unit of upper management, coaching staff, scouts, all kind of heading to these things together as a unit, which is very different from last year. And not even that, the Titans, they did have, correct me if I'm wrong, his name has escaped me for so long, but Terrell Williams, the former Coach T, the former defensive line coach, was one of the head coaches for the Senior Bowl last year. This year, the Titans have their fingerprints all over these all-star games. You can first look at the Senior Bowl, where Scott Fuchs is going to be the assistant offensive line coach at the Senior Bowl. Perry Carter is going to be the special teams coordinator for the national team. These are two guys who, Scott Fuchs was, very integral in the offensive line staff this past season. There's going to be some interesting line prospects that come out of this draft, whether they are going to be projecting at tackle, projecting inside. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, but good to get their hands on this class here at the Senior Bowl.
Well, Perry, I know
Carter. Oh, yeah.
And JT, real quick, just a point of clarification. I know he came from Kansas as their offensive line coach.
Yes.
Kansas has a right tackle at this year's Senior Bowl in Logan Brown. I haven't watched his tape yet, but James Foster with the 33rd team, a guy whose opinion I trust pretty soundly, likes Logan Brown quite a bit. I'm wondering if there's an existing relationship there, if there was an overlap where Scott was down there when Logan Brown was there, because we talked about it last year being on Pooney watch for Dominic Pooney. And it didn't ultimately fall the way that that we had hoped it would. But I'm wondering if, there's going to be some sneaky good tackle options, I think, late in this draft. And I'm wondering if this is something, a relationship there that we can kind of cultivate while we're down in Mobile.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Team Ramrop also saying should have taken Fuchs boy Pooney. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is a little bit of a mouthful there. But I think I got through.
I agree.
The best I can. But yeah, no, I agree with you there. But we're not here to hash on what should have been, and we will just go forward.
Maybe we ought to keep our eyes on the tackle from Kansas.
Yes,
just saying.
I agree with you there. Perry Carter, special teams coordinator for the national team. The Titans are losing a lot of pieces in free agency on expiring deals. Most importantly for Perry Carter's division, the special team ace, Luke Gifford, who is a free agent, whether he comes back or not. Very interesting, but maybe Perry Carter will be down there trying to find the next special teams ace or special teams demon. Potentially, we might have to crown a new one of those.
Well, don't forget, I like, what is Justin Hardy's deal looking like? I mean, I think he was at the locker talking about, I hope they bring me back next year. So I'm thinking he's on an expiring deal too.
Yes. And so,
turned around the Titans special teams this season.
You are correct. And it'll be interesting to see what you get from them, right? As we pertain to those later round picks, we saw how much of an impact guys like Jalen Harrell, James Williams, and eventually Cedric Gray, once he got up to speed, had on the impact, or had what impact they did have on the special teams over the last couple weeks of the season there. So that's one, it's maybe not the most important thing on the list in terms of the coaching fingerprints, but I do think that it still is important for a roster building perspective. And then finally, Peyton McCollum is one of the quarterbacks coaches at the East West Shrine Bowl. More importantly, he is coaching Shedeur Sanders, which we touched on this a little bit before diving into that. Shedeur Sanders, just as we were getting live, went into the meeting rooms on day one of the Shrine Bowl media availability. According to Teron Davenport, Titans brass Brian Callahan, Mike Borgonzi, AJ Highsmith, among others, are in that room. I think I saw, was it Eddie here or someone said in the comments, Team Ramrod, saying they really got footage of Shedeur entering and leaving rooms. That's what we got right now.
Like paparazzi.
I know. We're the Titans TMZ right now. Jim Wyatt and Teron Davenport down there doing the heavy lifting. But yeah, so they finally get to meet with Shedeur Sanders, which I think, kind of can get us into the next kind of topic of discussion here, Stoney, debating on what to do at the 101 throughout lying season. There's a lot of quotes out there that I've collected. Some we've already played on the show, some that are brand new, some that came out today, kind of discussing what the Titans could be thinking in terms of quarterback in this draft, but also at the 101. Stoney, before we move on, anything else that you wanted to touch on between, the importance of the Titans having their fingerprints on a lot of these, all-star games with Scott Fuchs, Peyton McCollum, and Carter?
I will say that it is interesting the positions at which these coaches are going down there and coaching. I think it's notable that it's offensive line, special teams, and then I don't remember what if Peyton's the quarterback coach at the Shrine Bowl.
He is, yes.
Okay, yeah, I think that's interesting. That is of note. I also want to clarify the timeline a little bit. East West Shrine Bowl practices kicked off today, and that game will be held on Thursday night. Senior Bowl practices start on Tuesday with that game the following Saturday. So it would be really nice if the Shrine Bowl would go back to having their contests like the week before the Senior Bowl. Then maybe we could try to work in both. But no, this is like, I don't think people realize this either, how kind of cutthroat the relationship is between the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl. Like, this definitely just kind of feels like it's a statement. We're going to run on the same week that you're running no matter what, buddy. But there's some drama there we don't have to get into, but I just wanted to clarify the timeline real quick.
Yeah, I think that is important because, you know, when it comes down to our podcast that we may do on Friday post practices, whether we're still there, still figuring all those things out. I know you will still be there.
I'll be face down in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah, but we might find some time to talk a little bit about what we saw from Shedeur in that game if he does end up throwing a little bit in that game as well. I do think it's funny how you talk about the cutthroatness of those two, and then you just have the little ugly duckling third sibling in the hula bowl that is struggling to survive right now.
Yeah.
And you know, for good reason, they're struggling to survive. So it should be a lot of fun. Let's get to some comments here before we get, you know, into the nitty gritty of this. Let's see. Ed Henry saying, can't we get a stacking the inbox on the old guy at the bar with white hair? Or can he join the podcast?
Man, that dude was real. Okay. And that dude, listen, I know Zach and I can't say shit because we were in Winsel's literally every day after practices. But that dude, like, we overlapped 3 times during the course of that week. We saw that guy 2 more times after that picture was taken. And I mean, he was pleasant to talk to. He would just come in and just like suck down oysters and then leave. And you know what? Hey, if that's my retirement, so be it. I'll be happy.
Yeah, good to see. James Neeson saying, damn, sorry I'm late, fellas. Holy sheet, Stoney, WTF. You have an interview in Mobile or something on that haircut. People are noticing, and that's always good. Bobby asking, which of these All-Star games has the better talent? I know traditionally it's been the Senior Bowl, but Sanders being at the Shrine Bowl makes me think that it's evened out. Stoney, I'll let you give your opinion. I still do, you know, if the Senior Bowl last year was secretly stacked, this year it feels like this roster has kind of blown that one out of the water in terms of maybe the talent you're going to find on day 2 specifically from the Senior Bowl here this year. I don't know. You know, I haven't dived too much into the East-West Shrine Bowl rosters. I've been focusing a lot on our Senior Bowl prep, but your thoughts on that roster and how they contend this year?
Well, I'll tell you, I do think from top to bottom that the Senior Bowl is the much better roster. And historically speaking, it has been like Senior Bowl A, Shrine Bowl B, and then you have Hula Bowl C. And there's like a couple of emerging games. Like I think the Tropical Bowl probably stands to benefit from the Hula Bowl's bottom falling out this year. And then there's the College Gridiron Showcase that, you know, has a lot of like UFL, XFL kind of people there, CFL people there for that. And it's kind of, there's a clear delineation between the All-Star games. But I will say in recent years, and I don't know this for sure, just from hearing people talking, like the East-West game wants to kind of get on the Senior Bowl's level. And so they've been like shelling out money for these prospects to come. Like we heard that with Zay Flowers choosing the Shrine Bowl over the Senior Bowl. And now it wasn't just Shedeur, by the way. It was like every Colorado player went to the Shrine Bowl instead of the Senior Bowl. There's some pretty nasty stuff on the bowels of Reddit about, you know, the Sanders family's relationship with Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl. Like there's some ugly stuff out there that I don't really buy into, but it could just be the Shrine Bowl maybe investing more in getting some more of the first round players. They got like Siobhan Ravel's going to be there. I don't know what the status of his injury is. The cornerback out of East Carolina, really, really good player. Some of the best tape that I've watched this cycle so far. He's going to be there at least doing interviews and stuff. They got Kenneth Grant, a bit top heavy as a defensive tackle, a little wobbly in the shoulders, but still like a fringe first round guy. They've gotten better over the years to a point where, you know, the Senior Bowl to me is always going to be the Senior Bowl. And from top to bottom, they are loaded. But the Shrine Bowl is making some moves that kind of make you think, all right, we're going to try and get on that level. We're going to push you for that top spot. Yeah,
I agree with you there. On that one, Joey Turner saying, while we kind of get towards this conversation, this is not a one that I've baked into our conversation today, but Joey Turner believes right tackle first overall, baby. Richard Snyder saying can't help but like Callahan the person, hopefully improves as a head coach. I'm assuming he's talking about the interview. And then Eddie saying, I really hope Callahan finds success because he's the most open and honest head coach we've had. It's been nice. Along with Ed Henry saying, do you get any access with the coaching staff down there? Are they more chill and willing to give you a few minutes? I will say we talked to after the press conference on, what was that, Wednesday? We were all back in the meeting room. Mike Borgonzi came down and introduced himself to all of us. We were talking with him, Brinker, and Callahan pretty informally in that meeting room. And it sounds like they're all going to be down there. So never say never for that one.
I will say that your best chance with the coaches is just some like serendipitous running into them on the street.
Yes.
Robert Saleh threw a moon pie to me a couple of years ago at the Senior Bowl from the parade. Like they're just out there walking around. I don't know if it was on this podcast or Football and Other F Words, but I shared a story about me and my buddy McCash turning a corner, just kind of like stumbling around downtown Mobile and just stumbling into a hotel meeting room where the entire coaching staff is sitting there. I'm not saying you should try and invade coach's privacy down in Mobile, but I'm just saying they're around. Like Zach and I went to breakfast one morning and sat down right next to Doug Marrone. And there was an incident in the stadium where nobody told me that I wasn't supposed to be on a certain side of the stadium. So I just walked over and sat with all the coaches and scouts, and I'm sitting there. Zach comes to join me. He's like, I don't think you're supposed to be there. And I'm saying, no, come on. You're good. So he sneaks through a rail and then damn near shoulder blocks Brian Daboll of all people. Like just wild stuff. Mike Norvell walked into Wenzel's one day. Your best shot is kind of catching them in these off moments because most of them, like, yeah, they don't want to sit down and waste an hour with you or anything. But if you just chit chat with them, most of them are nice people. They're not going to be rude and like sick their security on you or anything like that. But that's been my experience anyway.
Yeah, Logan saying act like you belong and nobody will question you, especially with that professional looking haircut now, Stoney. I mean, if you had the long hair walking into the coach's gaggle like man. Last year 2 years ago, imagine what you could do now. I mean, you could probably, you could run the Senior Bowl at this point right now. So
there's a picture of me somewhere on Twitter that Zach took from the other side of the stadium where it's just me sitting by myself watching the offensive lineman because I wanted a better look at the O-line. And there's just nobody around me except for there's like a collection of people in Titans gear, a collection of people in Raiders gear. And I sat there for like 45 minutes before I put two and two together. Like, oh shit, I am not supposed to be here right now. But nobody said anything. So
love it. All right. So let's get to the 101 and the options that we potentially could have here. And I think that, when you listen to what a lot of the Titans brass and whatnot have said this week, the options are really right now is stick and pick one of Shadur Sanders, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, or trade back where you're most likely are going to miss out on a Cam Ward or Travis Hunter. And, this is a big debate I think we've already seen this week, right? Brinker said in that off camera for quote only kind of press conference where he said the Titans won't, if they're there, they will not pass up a generational talent. If there is one in this class, I should say, they won't pass up a generational talent. Now, to me, I know a lot of people kind of went out there and said, won't pass up a generational talent. It's Shadur, it's Cam. To me, like right. We're jumping the gun there because right now, if you had to ask me at this time period, January 24th, with 80 days until the NFL draft, the only generational talents right now that have shown me just based on the tape that they can do it is probably Abdul Carter and maybe Travis Hunter. Yeah. Like if you can get the top end talent out of Travis Hunter to play both positions or kind of move Travis Hunter to play one more specifically and have them really hone in, which I don't think will happen, but like that's the only real avenue right now for me to see a generational pick, right? Like if you're sticking and picking there right now, unless you really fall in love with a guy like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, the generational talent aspect to me only applies to a guy like Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter.
Yeah, and the specification, the context, the nuance that I would add is that just because someone is a generational talent does not mean that they will become a generational player. Sure, the talent helps, forms a nice bedrock to build upon. It's a great starting point, but we've seen generational talents not pan out. I think Anthony Richardson, generational talent. Guy like Jadeveon Clowney back in the day was a generational talent. Didn't really pan out to the level that was expected of Clowney, and it hasn't panned out so far from Anthony Richardson. And I think if you look at it that way, I think Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter could both be considered generational talents. I mean, guys like these two, they just don't come along that often. Abdul Carter, the list of concerns with him is like 2 or 3 long. I mean, he flashes strength, power, speed, production, versatility, aligned in certain ways. I think his eyes are a little more underrated. I think his foot drive is a little underrated. Like he's a polished pass rusher that I think is going to test off the charts when we get to the combine. Guys like him don't come along very often. And I think for Travis Hunter, the versatility, the athleticism, I don't think that's a very common thing. So just because I say these two guys could be generational talents does not mean that I think they're going to join the NFL and they're going to become like Myles Garrett, Von Miller, Jamar Chase, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, which leads us to the other option that they really can explore right now, which is the trade back scenario. We heard from, both Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi on Wednesday. Chad Brinker saying, I would love to have 30 picks over the next 3 years, and 12 of those picks come from the top 100. Mike Borgonzi talking about, we want to build a foundation of homegrown talent and reward those players that meet our standards. Obviously, right now, the Titans only have 2 top 100 picks in this draft. And so how do you get more? It's trading back with one of those quarterback teams that might potentially fall in love with a guy like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. And especially, I think you have to have that conversation right now at the 101 with Cam Ward. You're already starting to see on, like I said, grain of salt, January 24th, but you're getting people who are pretty respected in the draft community, like Chad Forbes saying, Shedeur Sanders would have the least arm strength of any starting NFL quarterback, athletically would be in the bottom half. Only first round quarterback prospect for him is Miami's Cam Ward, which, whether you disagree or not, there are people out there who really do genuinely believe that the volatility on Shedeur, where he lands in terms of grades, is going to be a lot different than what Cam Ward brings to the table. And so I think there is a reality still where you can take 2 birds with 1 stone and trade back and still maybe have a guy like Abdul Carter or Shedeur Sanders be there, at 4 or 5 right now, if that's the avenue you wanted to go and, kind of pick up those picks. But Stoney, your thoughts on those two, especially the one in trading back right now and where we are grading the quarterbacks so early in this process?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's a reason that the Titans want everyone to think that they love both quarterbacks, and you want other teams in the NFL picking around that top 10 to fall in love with these two quarterbacks as well. I personally think that a lot of the number 1 overall stuff has been kind of overblown by the media, because if you've been keeping up with like draft nuts, draft analysts throughout the season, Shedeur and Cam have always kind of been in that like, maybe they're worth like a pick in the tens. I know, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Corey Kennan, Daft on Draft on Substack. Really good follow this time of year. But he just released his analysis of Cam Ward's on target throw percentage. And the conclusion was, I probably wouldn't spend a first round pick on this guy. So like the draft discourse among the draft diehards has been, yeah, neither of these quarterbacks are really a sure thing, which I tend to agree with. I think both certainly have their warts, and I don't think they are as polished as you would expect a top overall, top 5 caliber quarterback to be. So I think a lot of this narrative has been media overblown. And I kind of feel like we are just in lying season where, hey, this is the cream of the quarterback crop, regardless of how you feel about these guys. These are still your 2 best options in this draft. So we need to drum up some interest, even if we don't want to take the quarterback and we want to address it another means, because we might think Abdul Carter or we might think Travis Hunter is a potential generational player for us. Then, yeah, I think you want the smoke screens out. But what the narrative has been among the draft community versus what it is now is not very consistent to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. Joey Turner saying trade back would definitely be ideal. Seems like we're always in an awkward spot and never trade back. And this is a new one. Hopefully the Borgonzola can make it happen.
I like that.
Are we ever going to run out of these? I do not know. However, there are a lot of different quotes right now and kind of talking about that, which the overall point is that right now, the quarterback conversation at the 101 is always going to be silly because of the different quotes we're hearing from inside the organization that really differ each other, that are two different sides of the coin. And we will get to those quotes that we heard this week, but not before we thank our wonderful sponsor, ML Rose. Once again, 7 wonderful locations in Capitol View, Franklin, Gallatin, 8th Avenue, Mount Juliet, Sylvan Park, and coming soon to Inglewood. It's so easy to see why ML Rose is simply one of the best places to go for a date night, to watch a game, or to just enjoy some time with friends or get a bite to eat, because they have over 25 beers on tap. Stoney, my favorite right now is the ML Rose Owl Lager, along with, their fried pickles and peppers, their pretzel bites, just always hit the spot. Their chicken bacon ranch quesadilla is one of the most underrated things on the menu, I think. And they have snacks, wings, sandwiches, and of course their craft burgers. Burger of the month right now. We're almost getting to a new month. I'm excited to see, maybe they've listened to us on the Borgonzi burger. I don't know, but you can still get their burger of the month, which is a chopped cheese supreme. Got to get out to ML Rose and tell them that the Hot Read podcast sent you, especially with these games coming up this weekend. The 2 championship games should be some good ones. And so if you're looking for a place to go watch these games, check out ML Rose, because they have everything that you would possibly need to watch the game. Stoney, are we going to ML Rose for date night tonight or not this week?
No, not this week. We've got a date night planned down in Columbia, Tennessee. So I'm actually going to head towards Nashville whenever we get done here, but might end up at ML Rose at some point this weekend. We never know. It's one of our, I'm not kidding. Like, it's one of our spots where we want to go out. We don't feel like cooking. It's like, oh, ML Rose right there, top of mind. Like you said, the appetizers, like the Nashville hot cheese curds are fantastic. The beer is cold. It's a great place to sit. They've got TVs everywhere. The ambiance is fantastic. The service is always great. Love ML Rose.
Yeah, got to check them out. Thank you to ML Rose for sponsoring the show. Let's talk about these differing of opinions on the quarterbacks right now as we dive into the beginning of lying season. And we got to go back to one that we may have already shown you, but I think it's important to replay it just so it shows the stark contrast between the different personnel right now in the Titans franchise and in that upper management. We'll go with Mike Borgonzi first and listen to what he had to say about what he is looking for in a quarterback prospect. Once again, this is what he had to say, which may or may not kind of lead you towards, the Titans may be interested in a certain quarterback out of Miami.
Talent, obviously, to make every throw in the league. Accuracy, decision-making are big parts of it. The way you process coverages. The game's changed a little bit too, so having mobility, not just the pocket passer. And of course, the leadership part is a big part. They are the face of the franchise. They're your leader. They're the ones that are going to stand in front of the team every day, and they're going to follow them. And that's what they do. They follow, Patrick Mahomes. They follow Joe Burrow. That's what they do. That they set the tone. They're the most important, arguably the most important position in all of sports.
And so, outside of me just wanting to hear him say Joe Burrow's name again after Wednesday, he does bring up some points that may lead you towards a Cam Ward, the arm talent, something certainly Cam Ward has over a guy like Shedeur Sanders, maybe the movement outside the pocket and making plays with his feet, something that, Cam Ward definitely has over Shedeur. So it may, more or less lead you to the conclusion that the Titans may be looking at Cam Ward. But then, we heard earlier today, and I think I saw James Neeson in the comments here. He said it. Callie just fell in love with his first Tinder date today. We are taking Shedeur, fellas, because we heard a lot of things from both Jim Wyatt's article and Easton Freeze's piece about things that may tell you that they might be really liking what they see in Shedeur Sanders. And this is from Jim Wyatt's article earlier today from the first day at the East-West Shrine Bowl. Titans coach Brian Callahan saw quarterback Shedeur Sanders. And I just lost it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Decked out in a Colorado sweatshirt here on Friday morning on the campus of University of North Texas. So he went up and started what turned into a 15-minute conversation. Callahan had to say, "You can tell he's been raised right," Callahan said of his first impression of Sanders, son of Colorado coach and NFL Hall of Famer Deion Sanders. He's mature. He has a really poised way about him, and he seems like a really good kid. I enjoyed talking to him, and you could tell he's a guy who has been in the spotlight. He knows how to handle himself. He's been paid money, so he has a financial perspective. It was a really good first impression. Goes on to talk about more of his quarterback play and says, "The thing that stands out the most is his toughness," Callahan said of Sanders. "He took some pretty big shots and he kept rolling. He can stand in the pocket and deliver it. He can move and create a bit. He has some ability to move out of the pocket, and he does create on his own. He's not a high-end dynamic scrambler necessarily, but he is productive when he does, and he really has a good feel for anticipation and timing. You can tell he's been coached in that regard. Those things show up on tape." So it sounds like to me, Callahan thinks he does a lot of a lot of things right, and maybe may or may not be subtweeting Will Levis just a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. And then you hear what he had to say on this interview with Easton Freeze that kind of doubles down on this notion of what the Titans may or may not be looking for in a quarterback. And here's what Brian Callahan had to say earlier today when Easton Freeze got to sit down with the head coach.
When you misevaluate a player, how does that, as an evaluator, how does that affect how you look at the position going forward? Is it something where you maybe you have to guard against swinging too far the other way? Does it radicalize you against certain things? How does that affect your ability to move forward and find somebody that will work for something?
Well, I think you got to find, I think you're looking more for particular traits, and one of the biggest ones that I see right now, and the ones that good quarterbacks I've been around is, it's going to sound a little bit strange, but what's their nervous system like? What is it? What do they look like when things break down? How do they operate when the pocket is muddy? How do they operate under critical duress and critical pressure? Those are the things that I look at. And how does their brain essentially respond? How does their body respond to those stressors? I think a really good example of what incredible poise and calmness looks like is just you watch Jaden Daniels play.
First name that came to my mind when you said
the moment's never too big for him. Pressure never rattles him. He's efficient in his movement. He's efficient in his delivery. That's kind of what I mean by that. And look, Jaden is turning out to be what might be an incredibly rare prospect that, I would say probably, look, he was taken second overall. So like nobody missed on him. You know what I mean?
Right.
They knew he was a good player, but I'm just saying I think he's exceeded whatever expectations a lot of people maybe had of him. And it's been kind of cool to watch as a fan of quarterback play. But his poise is incredible. And that's what you have to have. And then you watch the great players in our league. And I mean, you look at Mahomes and Burrow and Allen and Lamar. I mean, you watch these guys play ball, Stafford. there's something about how they operate. And like I said, their nervous system is a huge part of that. And then there's three things that I always look at, and it's decision making, timing, and accuracy. That's quarterback play in the NFL, and you have to be able to, when those moments come where you have to throw the football, and everyone in the stadium knows you have to throw the football.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do it? Can you make those throws in those big moments? And that's what separates, I think, all the quarterbacks in the league, the great ones from the guys that are just good. And that's what you look for, is how does their nervous system work under pressure, and can they make good decisions? Can they throw on time? And most importantly, are they accurate? And I think you see that in the quarterbacks that are all still playing right now. But that's how I look at the position, and I think those are the most important things you look for when you're looking at it.
So, sounds a lot similar to what he said earlier today. It's almost like it feels like reading through the lines. Now, once again, lying season, right? But if the Titans were to be on the side of, Shedeur is our guy, I would continue to see this reality where the Titans really find a way to trade out, maybe back to 7 to 10, maybe even further. And if it truly is just a lot of white smoke and clouded, lying that we see, there still is a really good chance that I think the Titans could potentially have the best of both worlds if things were to go to plan. Now, once again, I do think that, all of this on January 24th is a good primer to remind you that what we talk about today is a first step into the world of this is all probably going to change by the end of this thing. And so, just wanted to touch on, because I know we got a lot of comments on Tuesday or Wednesday show about, are we trading back? Are we moving up? It's too early to say on that. There's no declaration, but if you want to take something, to heart with this team, when you talk about their vision, it really does feel like that they're going to try to do everything in their power to trade back right now and find a way to get more picks and get more of that young talent that they want to build their core around.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, man, there's an ideal world where if people just fall in love with Cam Ward because of the traits, the physical tools, the upside, the ceiling, all that, if somebody really does just fall in love with him, and even if it is like the Browns, the Giants, the Raiders right there, where the Titans wouldn't have to dip too far, they might still be able to end up with Shedeur Sanders. And that would be the craziest outcome, is that if they can pick up another first round pick and still end up with the quarterback that they want. I think for me, that would probably be the ideal scenario. But I think where we're at now, I don't know, man. If you think about where the quarterbacks are, how bad this team needs to address the quarterback position, if you think about the lack of real blue chip players in this draft, I understand wanting to trade back and get more picks, but I wouldn't want to let this opportunity pass me by for anything, because I don't, or for just any old offer, just to assume like, oh, well, we're still going to pick in the top 10. There's going to be a good player there. I don't know. Like, I just don't know, because I think this draft is weak at the top, and I think it's weak on day 3 as well. So there's like, I don't want to fumble the chance to get an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter. And I also don't want to fumble the chance to get one of these quarterbacks if they really think they can turn the franchise around. So I liked Zach's idea that he brought up on Football and Other F Words. 101 is not the only pick that they have that they could possibly trade out of. If they've got that pick at the top of the second round, they could trade back a few spots there, pick up a couple of day 2 picks. I think that's a nice idea as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, but Kenneth says it best, where he says, get ready for everyone yelling at each other. Trade back, Cam Ward, Shedeur time, Abdul Carter, as we've already seen so much. It's going to be interesting.
I will say, JT, I think those are the only 4 players that I can see in play for this team at 101, if they stick and pick.
Hunter, Cam Ward, Shedeur, and Abdul Carter. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Okay.
I mean, now, you look at like a guy like Will Johnson, sure, great. Malachi Starks, great players. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, would help this team more so Malachi Starks than Will Johnson because they have spent a lot of pick. Could you imagine if they take another D tackle with the 101?
Man,
that would be quite the interesting pick there. But yeah, like
Ashton Genty 101.
Ashton Genty 101. Gotta love it. But yeah, no, I agree with you there. If they stick, it kind of makes it tougher for us because it really just feels like there's 4 players at play there. But let's talk about, more down the line here, and we can get to that real quick before some other comments. Bobby Frick saying, can we get some clarification on Cam Ward? I saw today on Bleacher Report a stat that he said something like only 0.4% of his throws as turnover worthy plays. But then, Sam Phelan and a lot of others are pitching that he is a guy who throws a lot of turnover worthy balls. What do we believe? Now, Stoney, I know obviously everyone's model is different, so you're going to get varying different things in terms of models. But for me, Cam Ward has and always been someone who can play and make spectacular throws, but is also going to get you into a trouble a lot like what you had this year with the Titans and Will Levis. Now, he does just bring such an amazing wow factor that he can kind of change the game at any moment. But I still think that regardless of whatever model, it's easy to see that Cam Ward has his flaws in terms of decision-making and, putting the ball in harm's way.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple for me. Like, there's just times where he's way too comfortable throwing from out of position, and he doesn't take time to reset his feet when he's on the move. I don't know what grading system Bleacher Report used to determine that number. Probably not going to be able to provide a lot of clarity here. I don't know what metric Sam was using, but I don't chart metrics like that myself. I just kind of watch tape and write about what I see. On the surface level, I feel like there are a lot of turnover worthy plays from Cam Ward. I also think a concern when it comes to his accuracy is like the on target throws, which is different from completion percentage. Like, you can throw a ball 5 yards out of the frame of your wide receiver, and if they're good, long, strong hands, they can jump outside of their body and catch it. And that's still a completion, but it's not necessarily an on-target throw. That's just an example. And I feel like Cam Ward's on-target stuff is just not very good. There's a lot of work to be done there. So I err on the side of Cam Ward throws not as much on target as Shedeur Sanders. And I think that a lot of Cam Ward's throws are turnover worthy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Team Ramrod, coming back to Luke Gifford of all things here, but I think it's important. I remember when we signed Gifford, it was reported Bones was pissed. So I have to assume he's back, considering what Callie has said about him too. Great point. I think with the addition of Bones, definitely one. He also says that this is a generational podcast. We appreciate you, Team Ramrod.
Thank you.
Stoney, let's talk about some Senior Bowl. The draft starts in Mobile, and we have, about 10, 15 minutes. Obviously didn't want to do a full Senior Bowl dive in. Obviously, that's what we're going to be doing on both our respective shows, a football show / Hot Read podcast, and then your guys' football and other efforts on Monday. Really, really just starting to yap about the Senior Bowl. But I do want to get our initial thoughts out here first, but not before we thank one of our other amazing sponsors, Sinkers Beverages, a 4-time Best of Nashville Liquor Store of the Year who has been serving the East Nashville community for almost 40 years. It's easy to see why they continue to rack up the awards, because they simply have the best beer, wine, and spirit selection of any liquor store here in the greater Nashville area. When you head on over there, you have to join their in-crowd for special benefits, allocations, and bi-weekly tastings that you can only know about when you sign up for their in-crowd program. If you can't make it out there, don't worry. They've got you. Simply search Sinkers on Uber Eats and they deliver the booze to you. Remember, they drive so you can drink responsibly. Thank you to Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages for continuing to sponsor and support the show. Stoney, let's talk about this. And we've talked a lot about quarterbacks, and it's not just like that it is Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, right? There still is a very real possibility where the Titans maybe show their hand just a little bit here. Of course, with free agency starting before the draft, say they find a guy who maybe projects to be that bridge quarterback into the next era, and you look at one of these other quarterbacks down the line, you have a lot of different options here at the Senior Bowl, right? You know, we talked about your favorite, Seth Hennigan, of course, Tyler Shaw, Riley Leonard, Dylan Gabriel, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, who still not sure if he will be throwing at the Senior Bowl or not. That's been interesting. I have no idea. But the one that we will not see that was also supposed to be there, which is actually maybe your real favorite and secretly, I don't know if you're ready to unleash this take on the world, but Will Howard will not be attending the Senior Bowl along with some other Notre Dame and Ohio State players, Will Howard, Xavier Watts, woof, Donovan Jackson, woof, Jack Sawyer, Ty Hamilton, guys that I was really interested to see. Unfortunately, won't be there, but Stoney, you know, there are still some things to really like about these quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl that aren't, that aren't the big two, that is Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Is there still something to keep an eye on when we're watching the quarterbacks this week that maybe say if they do go in a different direction, one of these guys could be a guy they draft and develop?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think there's a very real scenario that if they stick and pick at 101, it's Abdul Carter. They go get a Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, a Kirk Cousins, someone like that to be the bridge, and then they draft one of these guys late. And I have two names that come to mind right away. Like, I know he's not going to be there, and I hate it, but Will Howard kind of seems like the decisive thrower that can make throws at all levels of the field. That kind of fits like what this offense like can run this offense from an operational standpoint. Had a hell of a playoff run. I get it. They're just coming, like, their season just ended a few days ago. They were just playing a game on Monday night. So I get it. I understand why the Ohio State and Notre Dame guys aren't coming to the Senior Bowl, but Will Howard was a guy that I was really excited to watch because I think from his tape, you can glean this is a kid that can play quarterback. And I studied his tape before the playoffs even started. So, like, adding that to the evaluation is gonna be pretty good for him. And then I look at Jackson Dart as well as a guy that has a lot of traits to him. Played in a Willy Wonka offense down there at Ole Miss, just crazy off the walls at the chocolate factory every Saturday. I don't know. I made this joke. I don't remember who I was talking to earlier in the week, but I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen Jackson Dart take a snap under center. So it is like the operational stuff that you wonder about with him. Like, can he get the team huddled up? Can he get him out of the huddle on schedule? Can he get to the line? Can he operate under center? And can he go through reads and progressions? Because there was a lot of that Ole Miss offense as well that was just a one read throw kind of deal. Just heave it downfield. Your guy's going to get open or throw it out of bounds kind of deal. So I think the traits are there with Jackson Dart, but for him, it's kind of the inverse of the Will Howard conversation, where Will Howard looks like he probably has it from the neck up, but isn't the most dynamic quarterback. Whereas Dart has some traits that make you think this guy could be electric, but he's got to prove that he can run an NFL offense. So those are the two guys that I think would be really interesting picks for the Titans. And then you have like the late round undrafted kind of dart throws, where I do think Seth Hennigan does have a lot of leadership qualities that are valuable to the position, that we heard the Bull, Mike Borgonzi, talking about leadership being very important to his evaluation process, where I think a guy like that could probably earn some favor with this Titans regime, where it's like, hey, we got to keep this Seth Hennigan guy in the back of our mind throughout this process.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. If it was for me, I think, Will Howard, Jackson Dart are two that are going to be very appealing as we watch, well, at least Jackson Dart this week. Zach in the comments says, yeah, but what about Wintzels? Y'all think that that was old man Wentzel himself?
Could have been.
You could have, if you want stuff about Wintzels, go back like 30 minutes and we have some good conversation about old man Wentzel already there. Here's one, Stoney, and I maybe this is a little foolish of me, but I'm willing to make, be a little Easton Freeze-ish here on the show and make a little bit of a take, mark my words, take here.
Okay.
But I do believe that as the biggest thing for me going into this week is that, if the Titans were to stick and pick in the second round, their pick will be one of these guys here at the Senior Bowl. I do think that there is a lot of talent here, regardless of position, that really is attractive to this team if they were to go with quarterback overall at the 101, if they were to go Abdul Carter at the 101, if they were able to go Travis Hunter at 101. There's a lot of interesting talent that's going to be around the 28 to 42 pick mark that I think is going to be here, which is the meat and potatoes of really what makes the Senior Bowl this season really work. First of all, we talked a little bit about them, but have to just bring up the interesting edge class that we're going to see this week. Jamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, if he ends up maybe falling a little bit, Kyle Kennard, Mike Green, David Walker, a lot of these guys that we talked about, but we get to see them in action this week. And really, it wasn't until the Senior Bowl last year that we really started to bang the drum for, a guy like T'Vondre Sweat. We knew about T'Vondre Sweat, but we didn't really were able to see the raw talent and power of a guy like T'Vondre Sweat until the Senior Bowl week. Is there a guy right now that you would say in terms of the edge class that there's one that you may think really just have you banging the drum at the end of the week for this guy based on what you see down there?
Yeah, I mean, it's Mike Green out of Marshall. I know there's been some reported character concerns out of him, but this guy knows how to rush the passer. He plays with speed. He looks like, some of these guys we watch, JT, and I know you've been working on the edge class as well. You watch them and it's like, okay, that's a really good edge setting defensive end kind of deal. Or this guy looks like he has the traits, but you might have to teach him how to rush the passer, teach him how to use his hands, throw a few moves out there, some counters, that sort of thing. Mike Green is the guy that has it all already. Now, I know the size, the frame might be a little bit of a concern. He does look a little undersized, and I know there are some questions about why he left that Virginia program and how ceremonious that was, if you will. But at Marshall, he is a disruptive force, put some really good tape out there. The question is going to be, can he do it consistently against NFL talent? And I look at him similarly to how I looked at Quinyon Mitchell last year, not equating the two, because I think Quinyon Mitchell, like you took one look at that guy and you're like, that's an NFL cornerback. And I think it's a little different with Mike Green, but the parallels I would draw were like group of 5 school, had the production, had the good tape. The question remains, how does he do it against the better competition? I think he's a guy that could be in play at the top of the second round for the Titans if they opt to go quarterback at 101. So I'm looking at Mike Green. I'm pounding the table for Mike Green, assuming there's not some, atrocious incident in his history somewhere.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. For me, I'm so excited to see what this Jared Ivey kid has. I think there's a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of potential there on tape that if, seeing it in play, in real reps this week could make me feel like, if they were potentially going to go the, Zach's way of trading back in the second, could you see them use one of those picks on a guy like Jared Ivey? I think that is totally in the realm of play for me specifically.
And while we're at it, we should mention Josiah Stewart. I'm telling you, man, like these edge rushers, they're just hopping off the train in Mobile next week. There's going to be a whole row of them going. Josiah Stewart's a guy out of Michigan that has some pretty good tape too. That's going to be a pretty interesting prospect to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Now, let's say that they do go with maybe an Abdul Carter and they go the bridge route. Could that leave them open to a potential option at wide receiver in the second round here? You're looking at a lot of, maybe not, first round caliber wide receivers. I know we had Ladd McConkey last year. We had, Xavier Legette. You had, Ricky Pearsall, a lot of guys who went in around the first round. But I think there is still some interesting prospects here at the Senior Bowl. You have Xavier Restrepo, Savion Williams, Alec Ayomanor, Jalen Royals, Jaden Higgins, Tez Johnson, a lot of interesting guys, maybe not as strong of a wide receiver class as we saw last year, but Stoney, who's the guy that you want to see the most this week out of this class?
Well, first of all, the scouts, the people that put the Senior Bowl together, did a fantastic job of making this a sort of like choose your flavor kind of wide receiver, because there's a guy for whatever type of receiver you need in this group. But for me, I really like Xavier Restrepo's tape. I think he could be a guy that sneaks into that, like Ladd McConkey,
Coleman range,
Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall kind of hype, the guys that people didn't really know a whole lot about until the Senior Bowl. Is like, wait till you see this guy, and improved his stock. I think he could be that guy. I think Jack Beck out of TCU could be that guy as well. I mean, he's a pretty polished wide receiver, versatile in his alignment, can play multiple spots, can do some really cool things. He's explosive, electric. I think people are going to kind of wake up to his skill set. And then you mentioned Savion Williams, just the do-it-all guy that can work. He looks like he's a built like a tight end, but they play him at running back some. They put him out at wide receiver. I know the refinement, the polish, the nuance, the route running is a question with him, but he's a guy that you just want to get the ball in his hands and let him go.
Yeah, no, Savion Williams, I think for me, like the biggest upside or like boom or bust candidate this week for the Senior Bowl, I think will be interesting for sure.
I will also say there are two guys on this Senior Bowl roster that fit into the category of, you look at the production and you're like, okay, why did these guys get invited to the Senior Bowl? But then you watch the tape and they have moments where you're like, oh, that's pretty nifty. I think it's Tennessee's Brew McCoy. That is just, nobody likes him. Everybody, Vols fans are just like, you cannot draft this guy. This guy stinks. But I'm telling you, like, I think that he's got some intriguing traits on tape that make him worthy of keeping an eye on. And then Daquan Felton out of Virginia Tech as well. You look at the production, I think Daquan Felton had like 300 yards this season. You're like, what is this guy doing at the Senior Bowl? But when you watch the tape, you have to glean it from small moments that just like once out of every 10 snaps, he does something where you're like, that's an NFL receiver. He's got the size, he's got the frame. I think those two guys are going to be interesting to watch because I think both of them have a little bit of dog in them.
Yeah, and then finally, that leaves us with maybe a potential third option right now for the Titans in round 2. Offensive line. They still are looking to maybe rework that entire right side of the line. You talk about Dylan Radins being a free agent. They don't have to bring him back. They could bring in a rookie right guard. They certainly need a right tackle, in this class, much like some of the conversations of the years past, although this year I think it's more prevalent than ever that there's going to be a lot of differing of opinions in terms of, is this guy going to play on the outside? Is this guy going to play on the inside? But I think both of us can agree that Josh Connerly is the best offensive tackle prospect right now at the Senior Bowl. Would you disagree with that? I don't know if there's another guy that you would really bang the drum for, but I think that, when you look at a guy like Josh Connerly, he could fit the archetype of, if you're able to, work with him and move him around, he could be a guy in play there for the Titans.
Yeah, absolutely. A hit and stick type of offensive tackle. I think he's got the juice to play the position. I think it's a rare case of these guys. Like, he's not going to kick inside to guard. The question is going to be like, can he switch from left to right? Or do you entertain the option of taking him, slotting him at left tackle and moving JC back to right? I know the conversations, what we've heard in press conferences is that they drafted JC Latham to be the left tackle, but if that fixes your offensive line, man, it might be worth kicking the tires on at least. I think another guy that could be in play, I don't think he'll be an option at the top of the second round. Most people seem to think he's a day 3 guy. Another guy that has some character concerns, Anthony Belton, the left tackle out of NC State, has some of the most violent tape out of this class. I mean, this dude looks like he can play tackle. There are some injury concerns there. Like I said, there's some character concerns with him, but he's got some really good tape. Another guy I'd be kicking the tires on, saying, hey, can he move over to the right side? And then I think there are some interesting tackles that I think are deserving of a chance to play tackle, if that makes sense. Like, at least let them play before they switch into guard. I'm talking about Jonah Savine, the kid out of Arizona. I'm talking about Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota. He's got some fun tape. Though I did say about him, he moves on tape like his knees pop when he gets out of bed in the morning. And then Emory Jones Jr. out of LSU, who I'm a fan of, but didn't necessarily take the steps he should have in 2024. I think there's going to be a plethora of options for the Titans there if they choose to go that route.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And it's certainly going to be an interesting week. Cannot wait to be there, providing you guys content every single day. Once again, if you were just joining us or were late to the show, we will be live every single day from the Senior Bowl next week, starting on Monday. Monday will be a football show hot read podcast crossover. Make sure to also look out for Stoney on football and other F words that day. And then the rest of the week, me and Stoney, 4 p.m., hot read podcast every single day. Also check Stoney out on football and other F words. I believe at 6 p.m. is when you're going to be doing it, sometime around there.
Y'all going to get tired of me next week. Y'all are going to be so sick of seeing my face and hearing my voice next week. I just know it.
Hey, but with that new haircut, how could anybody simply look away? But that's going to do it.
Still working on my part. I'm still working on my part.
We got time to perfect it. However, that's going to do it for us today on the Hot Read podcast. Thank you all for joining us. Got to give a special shout out once again to our sponsor, Sinkers Beverages, and of course, our wonderful and amazing title sponsor, ML Rose. 7 wonderful and amazing locations in Capitol View, Franklin, Gallatin, Melrose, Mount Juliet, Sylvan Park, and coming soon to Inglewood. And until Monday, when we are live in Mobile, Alabama, this has been the Hot Read podcast. We will talk to you then.
Boom.